Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Broadcast on. We're reading Caitanya Caritamrta, Adi chapter 1, starting with verse 59. A lot of philosophy here. Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Padijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Shridha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhule Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaur Avane Pracharne Nirvisesha Shanivari Paschachari. I'm going to read only the English, so we move. But this verse is from Bhagavatam. Tato dasangam utsrijat satsu sajeta buddhiman santa evasya chindanti mano vyasangam uktibi. One should therefore avoid bad company and associate only with devotees. With their realized instruction, such saints can cut the knot, connecting one with the activities unfavorable for devotional service. Purport by His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This verse, which appears in Bhagavatam 11:26-26, was spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava in the text known as the Uddhava Gita. The discussion relates to the story of Pururava and the heavenly courtesan Urvashi. When Urvashi left Pururava, he was deeply afflicted by the separation and had to learn to overcome his grief. It is indicated that to learn the transcendental science, it is imperative that one should avoid the company of undesirable persons and always seek the company of saints and sages who are able to impart lessons of transcendental knowledge. The potent words of such realized souls penetrate the heart, thereby eradicating all misgivings accumulated through years of undesirable association. For a neophyte devotee, there are two kinds of persons whose association is undesirable. One is gross materialists who constantly engage in sense gratification. Two is unbelievers who do not serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but serve their senses and their mental whims and their speculative habits. Intelligent persons seeking transcendental realization should very scrupulously avoid their company. Text number 60. The spiritually powerful message of Godhead can be properly discussed only in the society of devotees, and it is greatly pleasing to hear in that association. If one hears from devotees, the way of transcendental experience quickly opens, and gradually one attains firm faith that in due course develops into attraction and devotion. Purport by His Divine Grace. This verse appears in Bhagavatam 3:25-25, where Kapila Dev replies to the questions of his mother Devahuti about the process of devotional service. As one advances in devotional activities, the process becomes progressively clearer and more encouraging. Unless one gets his spiritual encouragement by following the instructions of the spiritual master, it is not possible to make advancement. Therefore, one's development of a taste for executing these instructions is the test of one's devotional service. Initially, one must develop confidence by hearing the science of devotion from a qualified spiritual master. Then, as he associates with devotees and tries to adopt the means instructed by the spiritual master in his own life, his misgivings and other obstacles are vanquished by his execution of devotional service. Strong attachment for the transcendental service of the Lord develops as he continues listening to the messages of Godhead. And if he steadfastly proceeds in this way, he is certainly elevated to spontaneous love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So much conviction here from Srila Prabhupada. He's so convinced. Next verse. The pure devotee, constantly engaged in the loving service of the Lord, is identical with the Lord and who is always seated in his heart. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one without a second, therefore he is all-powerful. He has inconceivable energies, of which three are principal. The devotee is considered to be one of these energies, never the energetic. The energetic is always the Supreme Lord. The energies are related to him for the purpose of eternal service. A living entity in the conditioned stage can uncover his aptitude for serving the Absolute Truth by the grace of Krishna and the spiritual master. Then the Lord reveals himself within the heart, and he can know that Krishna is seated in the heart of every pure devotee. Krishna is actually situated in the heart of every living entity, but only the devotee can realize this fact. In the famous verse from the Bhagavatam, Sadhavo Hridayam Mayam Sadhunam Hridayam Twaham Mad Anyat Te Na Jananti Naham Tebyo Managapi. Saints are my heart, and only I am their hearts. They do not know anyone but me, and therefore I do not recognize anyone besides them as mine. Purport. This verse appears in Srimad Bhagavatam 9.468 in connection with a misunderstanding between Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish. As a result of this misunderstanding, Durvasa Muni tried to kill the king when the Sudarshan Chakra, the celebrated weapon of Godhead, appeared on the scene for the devoted king's protection. When the Sudarshan Chakra attacked Durvasa Muni, he fled in fear of the weapon and sought shelter from all the great demigods in heaven. Not one of them was able to protect him. Therefore, Durvasa Muni prayed to Lord Vishnu for forgiveness. Lord Vishnu advised him, however, that if he wanted forgiveness, he had to get it from Maharaj Ambarish, not from him. In this context, Lord Vishnu spoke this verse. The Lord, being full and free from problems, can wholeheartedly care for his devotees. His concern is how to elevate and protect all those who have taken shelter at his feet. The same responsibility is always entrusted to the spiritual master. The bona fide spiritual master's concern is how the devotees who have surrendered to him as the representative of the Lord can make progress in devotional service. Supreme Personality of Godhead is always mindful of the devotees who fully engage in cultivating knowledge of him, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. So many verses are being quoted here. Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani Swantakstena Gada Brita. Saints of your caliber are themselves places of pilgrimage. Because of their purity, they are constant companions of the Lord. Therefore, they can purify even the places of pilgrimage. Purport. This verse was spoken by Maharaj Yudhisthira to Vidura in the first canto, chapter 13, text 10. Maharaj Yudhisthira was receiving his saintly uncle Vidura, who had been visiting sacred places of pilgrimage. Maharaj Yudhisthira told Vidura that pure devotees like him are personified holy places because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always with them in their hearts. By their association, sinful persons are freed from sinful reactions. Therefore, wherever a pure devotee is a sacred place of pilgrimage. The importance of holy places is due to the presence there of such pure devotees. And now devotees go with Krishna in their hand, in books, prasadam, and Krishna on their tongue, the holy name. So, and tilak on their head, which also makes people think of Krishna, and therefore devotees are places of pilgrimage. Such pure devotees are two types: personal associates, parishat, and neophytes, sadhakas. Purport: perfect servants of the Lord are considered his personal associates, whereas devotees endeavoring to attain perfection are called neophytes. Among the associates, some are attracted by the opulences of the personality of Godhead, and others are attracted by the nuptial love of Godhead. The former devotees are placed in the realm of Vaikuntha to render reverential devotional service, whereas the latter devotees are placed in Vrindavan for the direct service of Sri Krishna. Next, there are three categories of incarnations of Godhead: partial incarnations, qualitative incarnations, and empowered incarnations. The Purushas and Matsya are examples of partial incarnations. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are qualitative incarnations. Empowered incarnations are those like Kumaras, King Prithu, and Mahamuni Vyas, compiler of the Vedas. The personality of Godhead exhibits himself in two kinds of forms, Prakash and Vilas. Purport: the Supreme Lord expands his personal forms in two primary categories. The Prakash forms are manifested by Lord Krishna for his pastimes, and their features are exactly like his. When Lord Krishna married 16,000 queens in Dwarka, he did so in 16,000 Prakash expansions. Similarly, during the Rasa dance, he expanded himself in identical Prakash forms to dance beside each and every gopi simultaneously. When the Lord manifests his Vilas expansions, however, they're all somewhat different in their bodily features. Lord Balaram is the first Vilas expansion of Lord Krishna, and the four-handed Narayan forms in Vaikuntha expand from Balaram. There is no difference between the bodily forms of Sri Krishna and Balaram, except that their bodily colors are different. Similarly, Sri Narayan in Vaikuntha has four hands, whereas Krishna has only two. The expansion of the Lord who manifests such bodily differences are known as Vilas Vigrahas. Next, when the personality of Godhead expands himself in many forms, all non-different in their features, as Lord Krishna did when he married 16,000 queens and when he performed his rasa dance, such forms of the Lord are called manifested forms, Prakash Vigrahas. Next, it is astounding that Lord Krishna, who is one without a second, expanded himself in 16,000 similar forms to marry 16,000 queens in their respective homes. This is from the Bhagavatam 1069-2. Even Narada Muni, who understood the Lord more than anybody, was bewildered. When Lord Krishna, surrounded by groups of cowherd girls, began the festivities of the Rasa dance, the Lord of all mystic powers placed himself between each two girls. Purport: this verse is also quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-3. When the cowherd girls and Krishna thus joined together, each girl thought that Krishna was dearly embracing her alone. To behold this wonderful pastime of the Lord's, the denizens of heaven and their wives, all very eager to see the dance, flew in the sky in their hundreds of airplanes. They showered flowers and beat sweetly on drums. Purport. This is another quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33, 3 and 4. If numerous forms, all equal in their features, are displayed simultaneously, such forms are called Prakash Vigrahas of the Lord. Purport. This is a quotation from the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, compiled by Srila Rupa Goswami. But when the numerous forms are slightly different from one another, they are called Vilas Vigrahas. When the Lord displays numerous forms of different features by his inconceivable potency, such forms are called Vilas Vigraha. This is another quotation from Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Such Vilas Vigrahas are Baladev, Narayan, and Vaikuntha Dham, and the Chaturvyuha Vasudev, Sankushan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. The energies, consorts of the Supreme Lord, are of three kinds: the Lakshmis in Vaikuntha, the queens in Dwarka, and the gopis in Vrindavan. The gopis are the best of all, for they have the privilege of serving Sri Krishna, the primeval Lord, the son of the king of Braja. Next. The personal associates of the primeval Lord Sri Krishna are his devotees, who are identical. He is complete in his entourage, with his entourage of devotees. Sri Krishna's varied personal expansions are non-different in potential power. These expansions are associated with further secondary expansions, or servitor expansions, who are called devotees. Now I have worshipped all the various levels of devotees, worshipping them as the source of all good fortune. Purport. To offer prayers to the Lord, one should first offer prayers to his devotees and associates. In the first verse, I have invoked a general benediction, but in the second, I have prayed to the Lord in a particular form. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Sri Krishna Caitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Goda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. That's a nice one to chant, easy to learn. Vande Shri Krishna Caitanya Nityananda Sahodato Godo Daya Pushpavanto Chitro Samdo Tamo Nudo. Very clear and sweet. I'll repeat. I offer my respectful obeisance to Sri Krishna Caitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of God to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benedictions upon all. Shri Krishna and Balaram, the personalities of Godhead, who formerly appeared in Vrindavan and were millions of times more effulgent than the sun and moon, have arisen over the eastern horizon of Godadesh, West Bengal, being compassionate for the fallen state of the world. Next, the appearance of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu and Nityananda has surcharged the world with happiness. I wonder when will that day be mine. As the sun and moon drive away darkness by their appearance and reveal the nature of everything, these two brothers dissipate the darkness of ignorance covering the living entities and enlighten them with knowledge of the absolute truth. The darkness and ignorance is called Caitanya, the way of cheating, which begins with religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification and liberation. The great scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, compiled by Mahamuni Vyas from 4 original verses, describes the most elevated and kind-hearted devotees and completely rejects the cheating ways of materially motivated religiosity. It propounds the highest principle of eternal religion, which can factually mitigate the threefold miseries of the living being and award the highest benediction of full prosperity and knowledge. Those willing to hear the message of this scripture in a submissive attitude of service can at once capture the Supreme Lord in their hearts. Therefore, there is no need for any other scripture than Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport. This verse appears in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. The words Mahamuni Krite indicate that Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva, who is sometimes known as Narayan Mahamuni because he is an incarnation of Narayan. Vyasadeva, therefore, is not an ordinary man, but is empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He compiled a beautiful Bhagavatam to narrate some of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. In Srimad Bhagavatam, a distinction between real religion and pretentious religion has been clearly made. According to its original and genuine commentation on the Vedanta Sutra, there are numerous pretentious faiths that pass as religion but neglect the real essence of religion. The real religion of the living being is his natural inborn quality, whereas pretentious religion is a form of nescience that artificially covers a living entity's pure consciousness under certain unfavorable conditions. Real religion lies dormant when artificial religion dominates from the mental plane. A living being can awaken his dormant religion by hearing with a pure heart. The path of religion prescribed by Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from all forms of imperfect religiosity. Religion can be considered in the following 3 divisions: the path of fruitive work, 2, the path of knowledge and mystic powers, and 3, the path of worship and devotional service. Mukti Siddhi Kami. Mukti Siddhi. This path of fruitive work, karma kanda, even when decorated by religious ceremonies meant to elevate one's material condition, is a cheating process because it can never enable one to gain relief from material existence and achieve the highest goal. A living entity perpetually struggles hard to get rid himself of the pangs of material existence, but the path of fruitive work leads him to either temporary happiness or temporary distress in material existence. By pious fruitive work, one is placed in a position where he can temporarily feel material happiness, whereas vicious activities lead him to a distressful position of material want and scarcity. However, even if one is put in the most perfect situation of material happiness, he cannot in that way become free from the pangs of death, birth, old age, and disease. A materially happy person is therefore in need of eternal relief from mundane religiosity in terms of fruitive work can never award. The paths of the culture of knowledge, Jnana Marg, and the mystic Yoga Marg are equally hazardous, for one does not know where one will go by following these uncertain methods. An empiric philosopher in search of spiritual knowledge may endeavor most laboriously for many, many births in mental speculation, but unless and until he reaches the stage of the purest quality of goodness, in other words, until he transcends the plane of material speculation, it is not possible for him to know that everything emanates from the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. His attachment to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord makes him unfit to rise to the transcendental stage of Vasudeva understanding. Therefore, because of his unclean state of mind, he glides down again into material existence, even after having ascended to the highest stage of liberation. This fall down takes place due to his want of a locus standi in the service of the Lord. As far as mystic powers of the yogis are concerned, they are also material entanglement on the path of spiritual realization. One German scholar who became a devotee of Godhead in India said that material science had already made laudable progress in duplicating the mystic powers of the yogis. He therefore came to India not to learn the methods of the yogis' mystic powers, but to learn the path of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord, as mentioned in the great scripture Srimad Bhagavatam. Mystic powers can make a yogi materially powerful and thus give temporary relief from the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease, as other material sciences can also do, but such mystic powers can never be a permanent source of relief from these miseries. Therefore, in accordance to the Bhagavad school, this path of religiosity is also a method of cheating its followers. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly defined that the most elevated and powerful mystic yogi is one who can constantly think of the Supreme Lord within his heart and engage in loving service to the Lord. The path of worship of the innumerable devas, or administrative demigods, is still more hazardous and uncertain than the above-mentioned process of karma kanda and jnana kanda. This system of worshipping many gods such as Durga, Shiva, Ganesh, Surya, and the impersonal Vishnu form is accepted by persons who have been blinded by an intense desire for sense gratification. When properly executed in terms of rites mentioned in the Shastras, which are now very difficult to perform in this age of want and scarcity, such worship can certainly fulfill one's desires for sense gratification, but the success obtained by such methods is certainly transient, and it is suitable only for less intelligent person. That is the verdict of Bhagavad Gita. No sane man should be satisfied by such temporary benefits. None of the above-mentioned three religious paths can deliver a person from the threefold miseries of material existence, namely miseries caused by the body and mind, miseries caused by other living entities, and miseries caused by the demigods. The process of religion described in Srimad Bhagavatam, however, is able to give its followers permanent relief from the threefold miseries. Bhagavatam describes the highest religious form, reinstatement of the living entity in his original position of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord, which is free from the infections of the desires for sense gratification, fruitive work, and the culture of knowledge, with the aim of merging in the Absolute to become one with the Supreme Lord. Any process of religiosity based on sense gratification, gross or subtle, must be considered a pretentious religion because it is unable to give perpetual protection to its followers. The word projita is significant. Pra means complete, and ujita indicates rejection. Religiosity is a shape of fruitive work, is directly a method of gross sense gratification, whereas the process of culturing spiritual knowledge with the view of becoming one with the Lord, Absolute, is a method of subtle sense gratification. All such pretentious religiosity based on subtle or gross sense gratification is completely rejected in the process of Bhagavad Dharma, or the transcendental religion that is the eternal function of the living entity. Bhagavad Dharma, or the religious principle described in Srimad Bhagavatam, of which the Bhagavad Gita is preliminary study, is meant for liberated persons of the highest order who attribute very little value to the sense gratification of pretentious religiosity. The first and foremost concern of fruitive workers, elevationists, empiric philosophers, and salvationists is to raise their material position. But devotees of Godhead have no such selfish desire. They serve the Supreme Lord only for His satisfaction. Sri Arjuna wanted to satisfy his senses by becoming a so-called non-violent, pious man. At first decided not to fight, but when he was finally situated fully in the principles of Bhagavad Dharma, culminating in complete surrender under the will of the Supreme Lord, he changed his decision and agreed to fight for the satisfaction of the Lord. He then said, "My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt and am prepared to act according to your instructions." 1873. It is the constant position of the living entity to be situated in this pure consciousness. Any so-called religious process that interferes with this unadulterated spiritual position of the living being must therefore be considered a pretentious process of religiosity. The real form of religion is the spontaneous loving service to Godhead, the relationship of the living being with the absolute personality of Godhead, and the service is eternal. Personality of Godhead is described as vastu, or the substance, and the living entities are described as vastavas, or the innumerable samples of the substance in relative existence. The relationship of these substantive portions with the Supreme Substance can never be annihilated, for it is the eternal quality inherent in the living being. By contact with material nature, the living entities exhibit various symptoms of the disease of material consciousness. To cure this material disease is the supreme object of human life. The process that treats this disease is called Bhagavad Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, real religion. This is described in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, anyone who, because of his background of pious activities in previous lives, is anxious to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, immediately realizes the presence of the Supreme Lord within his heart and fulfills the mission of his life. Jai. Srimad Caitanya Caritamrta ki Jai. Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj ki Jai. And Krishnadas Kaviraj glorifies those who listen to the Srimad, to his book. So I'm just adjusting cameras. I'm going to say bye-bye. Hare Krishna.